So welcome everyone to today's Lunch and Learn, PR in the Age of AI for Life Science and Biotech Startups. I'm Adrienne Klein, Programs and Community Specialist here at the Oregon Bioscience Incubator, and I'm so glad that you're here with us today. Before we get started, just a couple of housekeeping notes. Please stay muted during the session. Take a moment to introduce yourself in the chat. We would love to know who's joining us. And feel free to submit your questions in the chat anytime during the program. We'll be monitoring those during the session, and then we will address all the questions at the end during the Q&A following the program. I'll share my LinkedIn in the chat so you can connect with me. I would love to do that. And I encourage you to connect with my colleague who's here with me as well, Lisa Wernley-Hutt. She's OBI's Controller and Financial Operations Specialist. She's here with us today as well, and her LinkedIn will also be in the chat. Otrati would like to acknowledge the land we are all on, wherever we may be. Otrati conducts business throughout Portland and beyond. It is making an effort to acknowledge the history of the area and work towards decolonization of the bioscience industry. To learn more about Portland's native, diverse, and vibrant community, please read Leading with Tradition, a document created by the Portland Indian Leaders Roundtable. And we're going to put a link to that also in the chat. I'd love to tell you about a couple of upcoming events. Ben Venture Conference is just around the corner. If you haven't signed up to go, highly recommend that you do that. We are going to kick off the Ben Venture Conference on Thursday, October 16th with a networking lunch, and we're going to be holding that at the Willamette Valley Vineyards Wine Room, which is just steps from the Tower Theater, which is where everything for the Ben Venture Conference is happening. So recommend that you join us for that. And then in November on the 6th, we're going to have our Accelerate Biotech Happy Hour. We'd love to see you there. At the end of the program, before you log off, a survey is going to pop up, and I would love for you to take just a couple of moments to fill out the survey. It really helps us improve our programs and help bring you the topics that you are looking for and are needing. Okay, in this Lunch and Learn, Eric Schudiske, CEO and founder of S2S Public Relations and Communications, joins us today for today's Lunch and Learn, PR in the Age of AI for Life Science and Biotech Startups. Eric is a veteran communicator and former TV journalist who helps life science and biotech startups own their narrative, craft compelling stories, and drive growth. In 2017, he founded S2S Public Relations, where he leads public relations and thought leadership campaigns that have secured speaking engagements at SXSW and other key industry conferences. He brings a comprehensive perspective on integrated communications, leveraging owned, earned, and social media channels to achieve business goals. Eric has placed client stories in major publications, including Fierce Biotech, Fortune, and the Wall Street Journal. He's a frequent speaker at startup accelerators, a guest lecturer at the University of Washington on public relation trends in technology startups, and an active angel investor in life sciences companies. And we'll also be putting his LinkedIn in the chat. Please feel free to connect with Eric. And without further ado, I will stop sharing my screen and hand it over to Eric. Everyone, please give him a nice welcome.
All right, thank you so much, Adrienne. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks everyone for joining. Hopefully you can see my screen here. There will be questions at the end, so I would invite you to put questions in chat. There's 1,000 different angles to public relations. I think everyone has their own interpretation of what PR means to them, how to leverage public relations. We'll get into what we see the value of PR is, but as we address PR in the age of AI, I want you to know that AI is more than just producing cover slides for your presentations, which is what this cover slide was produced with. So we can do more than just produce images with AI. So as you begin your journey, here's our next slide. The way that I view PR, and the view PR, especially through the lens of a CEO or a founder, is PR creates the environment for, yes, to be the easiest answer for investors, for partners, for recruits. And that's the place we want to get our clients, that we want to ensure that our ecosystem is enabled to be able to see and understand the value of clear proposition, clear differentiation from their competitors. Are you searchable? Are you discoverable with some really good deep dive content so people can understand not just your technology, but your perspective and the value that you add to your ecosystem. And then how are you communicating with those people who you are trying to attract, whether they're investors or partners or potential new colleagues? Do you have a newsletter? Or do you have an active social channel? Are you engaging with them on Substack? So we'll get into all of that. And AI is an accelerator for us in the PR world, in that we're able to move so much faster. And that faster means we're able to be more strategic in our applications of public relations. That's a long way to get into who I am. And Adrian, thank you for that intro. I'll just be on the slide for a minute, because this slide is what we see as a finish line so often. You know, these are some of the clients that we've worked with and currently work with. You also see some of the places that we place them, but that's after quite a bit of a ground game. You don't go from zero to that. So this presentation, I'm hoping to give you some of the tools and the techniques that you can use to help get you closer to building really powerful awareness that drives the business goals that you want for your startup. So here's your journey. Wait, we just had that. Okay, journey, check, me, check. It's not without obstacles. So, you know, oftentimes we think when we're scientific founders, you know, we're going to show people data or a graph, and they're going to think, that's it. All right, let me cut you a check. But it's much more than that. There's a story around that. So to tell that story, I'm going to show you a graph. So here's articles over time. This is just what we see, and this is good news. This is great news for Portland. So the search query using some of our platform software, that's a number of articles that mention Portland and startups and biotech, life sciences, or therapeutics. So pretty good, and trending upward, which we love to see. So this is what reporters also see, because the ecosystem that you're approaching isn't just Portland, it's national and it's global. So the news gets a little more crowded when you throw Seattle in there and Chicago in there. But when we really see a depression in impressions is when we look at the larger US ecosystem. We haven't even included Vancouver, BC in this. So there's quite a bit of static out there. So our goal in this presentation is give you the tools to walk through that static, to make sure that your points will land when you're approaching journalists, because it's not just approaching journalists, it's the research that they do after you approach them in order to generate proactive engagement. So your opportunity is to make some noise, and you're new. You know, this is your opportunity. You have these really valuable assets that are going for you, that the first three letters of news is new. And if you're a startup in the ecosystem, you have that card, and people want to cover new. They also want to cover funding. They also want to cover partnerships. They also want to cover FDA clearances. So your opportunity is to build from here. So this will be part of how you move forward. And I want to give you a prompt, and Adrian's going to be sending out this presentation afterwards. But this is a prompt that I would encourage CEOs and founders to use, which is, you know, are you delivering that first bullet point from our journey slide? Do you have a clear value proposition? Are you differentiated from your competitors? And you can use AI to assess that and give you a report card. And you can modify this, of course, but this is a good starting prompt, because what we know, not just from reporters, but also investors, if you're an investor, they're going to take your deck, they're going to look at your website, they're going to ask AI to analyze it, and they're going to produce a report. If you're a journalist, we're going to pitch them, you're going to pitch them, and they're going to look at your website and your social media. That happens more than 50% of the time before they even email back. So is that landing page that you're going to drop your intended audience on, is it really resonating with your audience? So you can do that using AI to generate a clear value proposition. So you can use that prompt and then use your human intelligence. So you're not just using AI, and Lisa and Adrian and I were talking about this before we got on. You can't just empower AI to be the ultimate decision maker for your messaging. You have to apply your human intelligence, apply it, establish a clear value proposition, and apply messaging not just to your website, to your social channels. And then we always encourage, and I think this is really important as we build this foundation for PR using AI, we encourage you to have a conversation with the wider ecosystem. What I really enjoy doing professionally is having to subscribe to a newsletter call to action on a website, because you're going to gather some really good business intelligence through that. Even if you don't send out a newsletter in the first 3 months that call to action is on your website. Who is signing up for that? Are they investors? Are they partners? Are they competitors? Are they potential job seekers? Who are you cultivating a relationship with when you begin to engage in a conversation? You'll see that through as well on your social channels. Who's responding? Who's engaging? How does this resonate with what you believe is your core audience? And I know because everyone on this call is an overachiever, I'm going to give you some extra credit should you choose as you're thinking about your messaging. Again, this is the first step, because when we reach out to media, when we reach out to partners, when we reach out to investors, we want to make sure that what we produce and what's on the website and what's publicly discoverable resonates with them. I'd say to skip the vision statement here, because that's really a 10 years time horizon. Move to the right column, 3 to 5 years. What's your purpose? How do you approach achieving your goals? What are your actions, your customer service? So this will all be in the PDF that you receive. You can move through that, really establish some strong messaging around your website, around your technology, around your team especially. And this next slide will show us why it matters. So this is a client's website traffic. Now, as you look at this graph, we had a funding and or FDA clearance. We see very similar in terms of traction that you'll see. You can see the peak for, this is a medical device company. You'll see the peak there. So we just had turned on Google Analytics. So you see that sharp peak. That's the day after we had the major announcement. And then follow on, 1 month later, we announced a new CMO. A month after that, we announced a new CEO. You can see that the majority of traffic that you're generating comes from that initial push around funding or FDA clearance. So before you make those huge announcements, having an understanding that you're beginning a conversation with up to 1,000 people a day or more, depending on how resonant you are in whichever vertical you're located in. But making sure that you understand that you don't just have this passive website, but that it's a place where you can engage with, begin cultivating relationships through email addresses and sign-ups for your website, and ensuring that they understand the value, because that will translate into additional conversations, will translate into stronger momentum in the industry if your website and where you're sending people really resonates with your messaging. This is all primer before you begin to do PR. And when it looks good, it looks a lot like this. So you have on this website a very clear headline about not what it does or what it is, but what it does and how it adds value to the ecosystem. Early detection to save lives. Very broad, but it gets in with a clear value proposition. You also see that there's very clear call to actions here. Either you can invest, you can contact this company, because we want to form partnerships. We want to begin those conversations. So that's the first step in any relationship, is just being there as your whole self, and that translates into your technology as well. And all this combined really creates a picture for authenticity and differentiation. And my first assignment, and this is where you can apply AI as well, is to write your thought leadership piece on that website. And I encourage all our clients to have a CEO why statement. Why are you the person to make this happen? And that basis of content can serve you in 100 different ways. So my suggestion as you look at producing this piece of content is explain the why. Why have you chosen this vertical to disrupt? Why are you and your team the right people to make this happen? Why is your technology in the right location linearly? Is it pre-approval, post-approval, clearance? Is it in market? Is it in some sort of case study right now? Where are you with your technology? But the hardest thing to do here is to make it 300 words. So you can use AI to cut this down. Why 300 words? You need it to be bite-sized and digestible. It can't be this huge trope. but it has to something that people can read in 1 to 2 minutes, and then they can share and have it affect them personally. So you want to address the need, you want to make an ask. And we'll get into this a little bit, as we think about how to actuate PR. It doesn't just live in one place. Just like your website, it's not static, it's not passive. This is content that you can use on Substack, which we are encouraging our clients to consider CEO profiles on Substack, definitely on LinkedIn. Hopefully everyone on this call is active on LinkedIn. So use that not just once, but you can carve out little, 2 or 3 sentence pull quotes for LinkedIn and do that every 2 months to create a cadence about the why piece. Why are you in this? And that's something that you can spend 2 hours on one day, schedule ahead using one of 100 different tools that are available online, and just have that drip out across your social graph over the course of several months. And that creates a really good piece that allows people to connect with you in a way that a standard stale website won't be able to offer. So as we discussed, the 200 level to this, as we're laying this foundation for PR, because it's going to be more than just an email. It's going to be email and then research by the journalist. You want to adopt that message, across LinkedIn. Blue Sky is something that we recommend as well. And then you also want to, and this is something you can take away if you aren't doing already, set up Google alerts for yourself, your competitors, and your industry writ large. Because this is what your investors are doing. This is what other people in the space are doing. It allows you to be on the trend line as you move through. And I'd have daily alerts around what are your competitors moving? Are there mentions of you or your company in the media? Because you'll want to make sure you follow that. And really, as you think about what content you can potentially pitch journalists, where's the white space in the conversation? What aren't people talking about? That's where it can really add quite a bit of value in this equation. And as you're going through these tasks, you're rewriting your website, you're working on your messaging, using AI to help refine your 300-word why statement. All this combined will help build awareness and discovery, because of course AI is crawling all of this constantly, but also validate and de-risk you and help align with the right investors, the right partners, the right colleagues. We've definitely produced why statements that for clients that have been able to leverage those why statements to interact with heavy hitters way beyond their pay grade that have come aboard because of the vision. And besides being new, that little baby picture we showed early on, you also have this vision piece, this impact that you really want to make on the world through your technology. And has huge magnetism to people who are in storied industry or have been in academia too long, who want to try something that they believe will make an impact on the greater world. Talk about your vision. This will allow you to recruit team members that potentially you couldn't previously if you didn't disclose that, if you didn't have that big picture vision. And also allow you to have an easier path to yes with earning investments, because it offers that texture, creates additional discoverability for you. So now that we have some basic concepts around how do you build this discoverability, we're establishing your ground game. We're creating this discoverability through your website and social media. And what we understand, and Crystal Clarity from our team has done some really great research here, what we understand about how AI currently functions is AI will crawl the internet and it'll pull from what it sees as the most credible sources. Those credible sources are media. More than 80% of the time, we'll see that the most cited sources will be Fierce Biotech, will be the Wall Street Journal, will be Genome Web. These will be the sources that are cited because there's a human in the loop. It's a third-party validator, someone who's a professional scrutinizer. And as Adrian had mentioned, I grew up as a journalist. I've been in those rooms, in those editorial board meetings where we've decided on which story will be the lead story, which story we're going to do, which story we'll begin to do, but we'll cancel or we'll scrub if something else better comes up. Those are the decisions that are made in newsrooms every day. And every story that you earn for your company goes through a process inside a newsroom to make sure it's vetted, and it's an opportunity that will align with the audience for that outlet. So having more out there that's reflective of your differentiation and value will be really important. The way that we do that, and the way that we recommend, is combining 3 different grades, your media relations, your own content, and then your individual profile building. It's something that we mentioned to all the founders that we work with, is we really are building 2 brands. We're building a brand not just around your company and your technology, but also around you. As you think about your exit strategy, it might be an IPO, it might be an acquisition. Either way, you and this company, you won't be connected forever. So we want to make sure that as you exit from your company, you take a lot of that equity with you, so you can stand on a larger stage and build the next larger thing as you try to build your impact on the world. So the media relations, the own content, which is your social media, and that profile building is really important as you think about building awareness for you. And as we think about this content, there's a lot of ways in which we can generate content. I think this is a place that is worth pausing just briefly, because this is a place where people really get hung up. Like, what can I talk about? Where can I position myself as a thought leader? And the answer to that is you're already doing it. You already have either funding, partnerships, intellectual property, you're growing your team, you're getting a new office space at OBI, your product development pipeline, where are you there? You're a subject matter expert. This is really important. And this is what our journalists tell us that they want. Someone with a strong perspective, someone who's a subject matter expert, and that is a card that they carry with them, so that if they have a story on biofabrication, if they have a story on pulse oximetry, and they know that they have an expert who can speak on this, you can get a call. And that's really important for you to be positioned in the minds of journalists as a resource that can speak with strong perspective. So there's about 3 slides in here that I really think are exceptionally important. And this is one of them. So this is what a reporter wants, and some reflections. A friend of ours found a panel recently, and this is a quote that came out of the panel. And I think it really speaks to how press releases are produced and how risk adverse people tend to be when we write press releases, for 100 different reasons, all of them very good. But if you're a top-tier health tech reporter and you receive a press release, are you going to use that quote that they just spoon-fed you? Or are you going to want something deeper, something more meaningful, something that has some tension? And that's this New York Times reporter that I've known for quite some time. When I pitch him stories, he's like, we're not a marketing material outlet. We need tension in our stories. And that means you have to have this strong perspective. You are, as is just so incumbent in this industry, that one of the most difficult and most competitive industries in the world, the startup ecosystem. It's you versus hundreds of others. So how do you differentiate? How do you make sure that you're advocating for your technology? You need to dethrone someone. You need to move past the status quo. And to do that, you need to take someone's market share, or you need to build new market share where it doesn't currently exist. And that's tension. And you can use that when you pitch media. But if you're just pitching media, about something that's, could be potentially amazing, it still needs to have a timely hook. Why now doesn't matter. And this is true. And as a former journalist, this third out of these 4 bullet points is absolutely true. The stories I do are determined by who I email and who emails back first. That is like the reality of the world that we're in. Sometimes it's texting, sometimes it's DMing, but it's the same. Who do they know who's in that ecosystem, and who are they reaching out to? If they don't know you or they can't find you, they can't email you, they can't text you. So the who emails back first is the most important piece. And I mentioned there's about three or four different slides. In 2 slides, I'm going to give you a breakdown of what a reporter email looks like and what a pay-to-play email looks like, to help you kind of break through what is that static, who's trying to take money from me, versus who's a real journalist reaching out to me with a real story that's really going to happen. So we'll give you that, but the email back first piece is critical. This isn't tomorrow. This isn't in an hour. This is stop the meeting you're in, email back, let the reporter know that you're interested and ask them what their deadline is. Those are your 2 steps. Interested, when can I get back to you? What's your deadline? And happy to jump on a call or whatever is easiest for you. Acquiesce to their schedule. 60% of journalists, if you're going the other way, if they're not discovering you, you're pitching them. And this is why it's so important to think about everything we covered in, it's essentially the first half of this presentation. They're going to look at your social channels. They're going to look at your website. Is what you're pitching them, is that consistent with your website? Are they seeing what you're telling them on their website? We have had opportunities that have not come through with major news brands because there was that inconsistency between our messaging and our client's website. They're like, wait, we're not seeing any of this on your website. And it's tough when you get that from a Forbes reporter. And knowing that, all right, now we have to go back, and then we have to try and reinvent it. And then, you're just facing all these hurdles. So making sure there's such a strong consistency there. And one of the ways a team member of ours added some notes to this slide that I think are really important. So what a reporter wants. They really want to talk to you for the least amount of time possible. They're under deadline, and we've just scheduled a radio interview for a client. They're in market. They have a diagnostic scheduled radio interview. The interview is going to be 5 to 15 minutes at tops. That's it. That's what you're going to get, because the radio story is 45 seconds to 90 seconds. And that's a big radio story, But they want all the information they can get. So make their lives easier. If you're pitching yourself, you're pitching your CEO to journalists, include the headshot. Don't make them come back to you and ask for a headshot. Make sure it fits the profile that they need, that it has the right pixel count. That's not 60 KB, that has a little bit of substance to it. And then if you have any art, if you have a graphic or you have an illustration or you have an image of your device, put that in there too. Journalism is storytelling. Visuals matter. So make sure that that's all included as you're pitching your journalists. But the best case is you do everything we talked about in this first half of the presentation. A great website tells your story. You have a why statement that exists out there that you're using to produce content across LinkedIn and Substack, and a journalist is searching exactly that topic and you come up. Or they're using AI, which they do. Give me the top 5 startups in this ecosystem, and then with that fit these criteria. They don't want to have to Google search anymore, and they're really going to get something that's interesting when you do that in terms of part of our competitive analysis as well. So think about how you can move forward. And here's the difference. And this will be in your PDF too, so you don't have to. One of these is real. One of these is a real journalist who can get your technology in front of millions of people. And one of them, they want to take $10,000 or $15,000 out of your pocket for almost zero ROI. And here's how you can tell. So the one on the left is real. That's from Phil Galewitz at Kaiser Family Foundation Health News. They're a wonderful one-stop shop because they syndicate. So if we get to KFF Health News, we're in Fortune, we're in the Wall Street Journal, we're in about 100 different local newspapers. And that's really strong. He says who he is not overly warm because they're working fast. How many other emails like this to potential competitors did he send out? Yeah, I don't know. But I know I responded within about 2 minutes to move this along. The one on the right, they're hyping up the opportunity. They're telling you where it is, less inquiry, interview invitation. I obscured some of it, but they also, in this circle, they also talk about how many digital impressions they have, how many subscribers they have. It's not really them. They're either an insert or, we get a lot of video purveyors that will say, we'll get you on Fox News or CNN. and they buy an ad spot for 30 minutes in the dark hours of the night, and then they sell that time, and they produce a 30-minute show. And sometimes they have a really great anchor. If you Google stat and Kathy Ireland and pay to play, a really good article comes up about how to avoid this. What I'm showing you now is 5% of our work. This is CEOs will email us one of these and say, "Is this real? Is this real?" And then we get to help them out. So I wanted to make sure that everyone on this call had that at least perspective on like what is real. And what's great about Phil's email on the left is he's giving me a deadline. Let me know by Tuesday. Very short. He doesn't have to sell me on what KFF does because I know. And then on the right, it's very pitchy. So you now have a little bit of a tool to make sure that when you're ready to tell your story, and someone reaches out to you, you're not wasting. It's not just the money; it's the time that you'd be investing in the one on the right. So I'm going to give you an example of what I'd like to think of as the perfect story. You may know this person. I did not. I want to tell this story for a couple of reasons, because it shows the power of having one message. And as you go through your conversations with investors, with partners, think about your one message. What is that headline? Like we showed on the website earlier, save lives. So when I was a reporter, I was covering an event about the NBA, and I never watched the NBA. Don't know anything about the NBA. I don't know who's in the NBA, and it was in Seattle. And we leave the event. I was doing 2 or 3 stories that day. This was the smallest story I had to do. We just had to go there, get some sound, and come out. Photographer and I get in the elevator. There's this gentleman there as well with a friend of his. And right as the doors are closing, someone jumps in. And this person was fanatic, like humming with intensity, because the person you're seeing on the screen was in the elevator. And the doors close, and instantly the person in the elevator who's just humming with this intensity says, "Mr. Russell, I'm the biggest fan." So this is Bill Russell. Was with the Celtics NBA team, helped them win 10 championships. He's one of top 3 to 5 best basketball players of all time. Coached the Seattle Sonics. Lived in Seattle. I had no idea. So we're in the elevator. We're going down. There's a super fan in there, excited about Mr. Russell. And then Mr. Russell looks at him in kind of a benevolent way. And he had a very deep voice. And he says his one message. He has about 30 seconds to make his point because the elevator is going down. He says to this super fan, "Do you love your father?" And we all kind of just stopped breathing in the elevator. I kind of forgot I was even there. And Mr. Russell then looked at us and he asked us. We all affirmed, we loved our fathers. And then he says, "Well, you should probably tell them then." And then with the doors open and everyone leaves, we're like, "What just happened?" But that was just one message. He could have talked about a sports drink. He could have been 100 different ways, but he chose, because I'm sure he has this engagement or had this engagement, he passed recently, had this engagement very often. What's his one message? What does he want the world to know about him and his perspective? And that's really powerful. He knew the shot clock. How much time do you have with an investor? How much time do you have with a partner? What is your one message? To think about, here's how much time I have, here's how I'm going to deliver it, and what that is. I think that can be really powerful and clearly still resonates today. So when you think about your perfect message, you want to find your people. How do you find your people? There's a tool out there called SparkToro, and it's where your people live. So we just did a quick search, and this is a little while ago. Quick search around medical devices. We do quite a bit of work in medical devices. So it tells you the top YouTube channels, the top podcasts, the top subreddits. And many more. It also has top media, top Twitter handles. So you can do a really big deep dive into who are the top influencers or who's really carrying the conversation in your space. And this gives you an opportunity to find those people. So if you're thinking about who will I pitch, what podcast should I be on as a CEO or founder? How can I make sure I have the right business intelligence? Think about using SparkToro, which is free, because I'm familiar with startup world. So you want to make sure budget conscious. use that tool, find your audience, and then you can start, listening to new podcasts, being more informed about where your technology is moving and how your technology specifically fits into that equation. So as now you've built this wonderful website, you're active on social, you're differentiated, you have this really unique value, you know where your audiences are living because you use Substack. You've used AI to help you write that thought leadership piece. You've done competitive research. And I know we had a homework assignment in this presentation as well, and we'll talk about that at the end. So how do you cut through the noise? I would suggest if you're considering bootstrapping PR, you'll find 3 journalists who are covering your space in your verticals and start sending them updates. But make sure that they're timely and they're relevant. The pitch that I just secured for that radio opportunity was a soft sounding pitch. What do you feel about this story? And our reporter bid on it. So then we had to hustle and get it across the finish line. But you can do that too. Like, what do you feel about this story? And then talk about everything you've already done, the differentiation that you have, how you're unique, and you have to make it short. Reporters prefer email pitches that are 3 or 4 sentences, not paragraphs, sentences. So be really specific about your ask and then use hyperlinks when you're reaching out to them so they can do some deep research. I wrote this really short piece on why this matters. Take a look for a little more information. You can send them to your website. And because you're tracking traffic, you can see if they're also then sending other people, or they write a story. You can see how quickly that website traffic moves. So you start developing your media pitch list. Who are the most important people? What we discover through courses of engagements with our clients is that changes. For the first 2 or 3 years that we're with a startup or that they exist, your reporters will be your Oregon Business Journal reporter, your local newspaper reporter, GeekWire reporter. There'll be people who have a strong regional affinity to you. But as you grow, then you become more specialized. Maybe you're in genomics, so Genome Web becomes something that's important to you, or fierce biotech. And then you begin to elevate up into industry-specific media. And then after that, you're in the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times. You start becoming bigger, and you're gaining this media mass as well. So make sure it's a well-researched pitch. Last thing you want to do with a reporter is waste time. So make it very clear. Know either whether you're talking to investors, KOL, or journalists. Make sure you're up to date on recent activity. We'll always look at what a reporter's last story was before we pitch them, because we want to make sure that we understand where their headspace is. So we're not either pitching them something that they've just covered or something that is so out of left field. Reporters typically will have 3 to 4 different beats. So if you're a medical device, it might be a medical device. They might also do some therapeutics. So you have to understand where your reporter is. And the most important element of any pitch, and this is in this slide as well, what I care about 98% about when I'm writing a pitch is the subject line. If they don't open that email, it doesn't matter. Whatever else is there, it doesn't matter. So the subject line, if you can use the word new or first, those are really tantalizing elements. They have to be true. It has to be a true statement. But if you can use those, you're going to get some attention. But it also has to think about as everyone here is in startup, your TAM. What is your total addressable market? That matters to reporters because it matters to their audience. Does this affect 1 in 10 of my audience? Does this affect 10 out of 10 people in my audience? So think about how germane are you to the audience that reporter is serving, because they're the gatekeeper. Their best interests are who are their audience and how do they make sure they safeguard their audience and their audience's time with relevant and timely material. And if you've done everything in this presentation, you'll have relevant and timely material. You'll be able to be up to speed. And there are times when you don't want to do PR, and there's times when you do. So we can discuss that in Q&A if that's important to you. But when you're turning it on, these are the steps that you do want to take. So very narrow targets, make sure it's relevant, subject line is something you should sweat over. 7 words that you really, really sweat over. And then, as you're beginning, bigger, especially with media, isn't always better. You can crash your website if you're on the Wall Street Journal now. There's things that can happen if you go too big too soon. You might not need it. And that's what we advise a lot of clients on. Like, let's make sure that we're producing media results that are reaching the right audience for you. If you're pre-market, those audiences will be completely different than if you're post-market. So reaching your desired audience is more surgical, and you have SparkToro to help you find that. Excuse me as I take a drink. And that those outlets, those niche outlets, those are validators for you in a way in which I would encourage you to make sure you're wringing value out of those. Is should you reach one of those outlets and you secure a story, make sure you put that on your website as seen in, and then put that media outlet, Urology Times, on your website, so that other people can understand that you've been validated and de-risked to some extent, at least by this reporter, and that's meaningful. That's a really meaningful opportunity. So size of the audience, that's not what I'd focus. I'd focus on the prestige of the publication. And here's a quick case study. This is Trevor from our team worked on this project. And it talks about the long tail impact. So he produced a YouTube video, kind of guerrilla style, not animal, but style of the video, and posted that video online. And this is precision oncology startup and looking for essentially bridge funding, get to the next step, and working hard on it and trying to find success, and produce this video among many other activities. Video was an effort. They definitely were purposeful about it. And months later, an email comes into the CEO that someone had seen the video and was interested in investing. By being proactive about building awareness, investing, and not a lot is guerrilla, investing at least the time and effort into producing a video that is publicly discoverable and is out in the ether. You don't know which non-specialist investors might have a very, very important piece of their heart or their interest in exactly what you're doing because of their family history or history in general, that they might really be interested in investing in an oncology startup or a therapeutic startup because someone in their family has had that disease or it lives with that disease state. So think about non-specialist investors and how you can make sure your story is resonating far beyond just a very niche investment portfolio. So as you think about video, there's other ways, and we're closing in where we'll get into some Q&A. So if you want to think about questions, you can put into chat. We'll discuss those here in just a little bit. But a method that's definitely on the rise is Substack. This is a CEO we know well, and he's excellent at Substack. And he does Substack for a few reasons. One, investor updates, but two, also just research and discoverability. And I think a lot of CEOs, a lot of founders, have this desire to communicate where their science is. And Substack is a really powerful way to do that. So if you're thinking about, should I post more on LinkedIn? Should I have Substack? Should I do X? What about Blue Sky? Our suggestion is definitely LinkedIn. Your first step should always be LinkedIn because your funding ecosystem will be there with investors. There's validation there. You're building professional relationships. Your potential partners will exist there as well. But Substack is the second step that we would suggest so that you can produce content that's relevant. And this is an application for AI as well. Not that AI is producing the content for you, but you can put in bullet points and you can ask AI to draft. And then you can take that draft that's 80% there, then you can refine. You can take something that might have taken 3 or 4 hours and condense that to 30 minutes to an hour. So your ability to accelerate your content production is really powerful with AI. And this is in the PR world. PR can become equivalent to advertising now because you can produce so much content so quickly, But for you as a CEO or a founder, this can be really powerful for you as you think about, how can I make sure my messaging is out there and discoverable, and we're keeping it fresh. That's an important part about LinkedIn and also Substack, is you need to post regularly, and there needs to be unique insights. This can't be generic, but it has to be really personal and has to be driven through curiosity and passion. And I'd advise you to have that lens as you're thinking about what content should you produce. And we have lists of content on there. So we've given you a lot of ways that you can be successful at PR, especially in the age of AI, to build awareness. Something that I also like to do is show you how you can really fail at this. Now, how can you make sure that you just aren't doing a great job? So let's make sure. I actually had a friend who got an F+ once. The spelling was immaculate. Sentence punctuation, really good. Content was horrible, but spelling great. So how do you get an F+ at PR, social media and thought leadership? You ignore it. You start and you don't stop, or you start and you stop. The content is old. Think about your website. And we're redoing our website now because we have to practice as we preach. But is your website as relevant as possible, especially just ahead of funding, just ahead of FDA clearance, just ahead of a big partnership? That's a time to just think about, especially if you have access to your website and you can do this yourself on WordPress, just update language, add a new relevant image, that matters. So I think right before any major announcement, right before coming out of stealth, right before that funding, make sure you refresh and look at your platforms through a new eye. You can use AI to do that. Give them the press release that you're going to send out and say, does this messaging on this press release match my social media and my website messaging? And I think that will give you more than an plus. Here's how we use generative AI for PR in our company. So we're primarily in medical device. We do some therapeutics. We do some diagnostics. We also work in climate tech as well. So we do it for understanding complex topics. It's great for that. We will comb through transcripts. Oftentimes we'll have a CEO on a podcast. We'll plug that transcript into AI, and we'll pull out key messaging because the CEO is going to guide our messaging. And we can do some discovery with the CEO and get there. But oftentimes, they're flying the ship. So we want to make sure that we understand where their mind is. And also creating social posts. If you put your 300-word essay into AI and you said, create 5 social posts around this to be spaced out over the course of these months, and here's the audiences that I'm hoping it attracts, you're going to get those 5 social posts. And it's going to help you schedule those out. But, as we talked about in the beginning of our presentation, you are solely responsible for the content. AI is not responsible for the content. If you post it, it's on you. So you have to make sure that it's up to date. Also, make sure it matches your tone and the brand of your company. Are you more creative? Are you more filled with expression? Are you more strict? Think about where your tone is and make sure that you're hitting that. So our last piece, this is a prompt, and I won't read it. Some of you who registered early, this was in there. So I'm interested. If you have questions about this specifically, and I'll walk through it briefly, please put those in chat. But this is what we want AI to do for us. We want it to look at everything and give us back, exactly what we want. So who's in our competitive landscape? Not just in seeking funding, but also technologically. Who's at the same stage of product development as us? Who's at this stage of funding? Think about, these are our competitors, if not on the technology front, on the funding front. So you're in a hyper-competitive, or also in a hyper-competitive industry. So how do you make sure everything at the beginning of this presentation is landing? And this will help that. But ask AI to do some analysis. What's the rationale for choosing these companies? Give me their contact information. Where are their social channels? And then you can do your own exploration about how are they different? Are you the worst, not the worst, but something that I'd consider an F plus would be your messaging almost exactly matches one of your competitors. And this is going to give you the ability to find that, because you don't want an investor to then screen share and show you a competitor that's exactly matching your technology. You want to be ahead of that game. If you're setting alerts for yourself, you're going to be ahead of that game. But this is another way to find that. So, Adrian, we're at our question stage.
We are at the question stage. It was amazing, wonderful. I love that prompt as well. I was wondering if you wanted to ask if anybody wanted to share their findings with their prompt before we go into questions.
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay. I would love to hear what other people have come up with. So, okay, so Elizabeth says, I did it for 2 companies, plus for our organization as a Washington State ecosystem to figure out who are the potential collaborators and what does AI/really social marketing tell us about how we are positioned. Any feedback for that?
No, I think that's a great use case. I'm interested in if you found oh, hi, Elizabeth. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
Was it useful? I think what I'm most interested in, was there something you didn't know before that you discovered through this, and was it valid?
Yeah, I think it was a valid prompt. It's interesting if you use different chat GPTs. I use the most recent of Claude, that you get different responses. And so what are the algorithms that are drawing in the information that goes into one of the chats outputs? But I think if I was a founder and trying to differentiate myself from other companies, which is why I was doing that one comparison on the startups, I would actually see that there's a lot of value to then go back to your marketing plan, which of course Claude demonstrated the advantage of that, and showed me what my marketing plan should be after this.
Great. I mean, I love that, because I think then you get to apply your intelligence. You get to take something that, Claude is giving you, and then you get to fact check it against your reality and then make it your own. So I do like that. It gets, it might get you 80% there, but it's incumbent upon human intelligence to make it something that's really, really shines and really differentiates. So yeah, good prompt. I'm glad that was at least somewhat useful.
Yeah, thanks.
Well, and Brandy said that it gave her the top 10 competitors. Gemini AI.
Yes, it was.
And Brandy, was there, when you looked at those competitors, did you find some that you hadn't known before? Was there some discovery there, or were they already all on your radar?
Out of 10, honestly, I hadn't heard of 4 because I'm in the beginning stages of things.
Okay.
It was great.
Good.
Very helpful.
Were there any that were very close to you, where you see your technology now or in the future, that you're able to kind of parse apart that differentiation a little bit
Yeah,
more?
there's one particular thing that I can do in health coaching that Medicare just recently started reimbursing for, and a lot of people may not know that. It's a new thing. It's a new code that pays the caregiver to pay for their patient, and I don't think anyone really truly knows about it in health coaching. Neither do physical therapists and things like that. So that's what I'm researching right now.
Okay, and I think allowing other people to understand that provides a lot of value to the ecosystem.
Yes.
Provides a lot of value to so I think if you have this little nugget of information that is new, we talked about how new is so powerful, that's something that you could leverage in a significant way. So I'm excited for you.
Thank you. Appreciate your presentation. Nice job.
Well, thank you. I'm glad you're here. Thank you.
We do have a couple of questions in the chat. There's a couple people who asked a couple of questions, and I was wondering if they wanted to take themselves off of mute and ask the question directly to Eric.
I can go.
Perfect. Thank you, Ann.
Yeah, so yeah, this is Johan Clovis. I receive more and more invitations to participate in podcasts, and I'm sure other people in the audience also do that. how important / relevant are podcasts in terms of making sure that we raise awareness and we are visible? And what are the things the errors to avoid?
Great question, and I feel like podcasts, about 10% of them are excellent. You're really going to get some high return on your participation in those podcasts because they have developed audience share. And there are a few that are long-standing. Some that I really like, MedTech Guru is one of them, MedSider is another one, that have been around for years and talk to CEOs and founders of companies. And they really have a meaningful impact. 90% of podcasts aren't worth it. Their audience base is too small. Sometimes, those pitches you on are pay to play. They'll find you, 5 different, I get those sometimes too. And imagine you're getting direct invitations, but sometimes I'll receive invitations even from other PR firms. Like, we can get you 5 podcasts a week. There's a business development angle, but if you find the right podcast, my suggestion would be to record it. Right now, what we're seeing, the best podcasts, most relevant podcasts for our clients are booking anywhere from 12 to 16 weeks out. So you're already into next year before you record it. And then it's usually about a month of production time. So you're looking at a 3 to 4 month lag, but to start getting on calendars now with a really unique perspective. And then you can use that 100 different ways. I love it in a newsletter. I like pulling out clips to put on social media. It's great to have it on your website as well. But podcasts, 10% of them are great. 90% of them, I'd really scrutinize that opportunity, make sure that they have either they've been in existence for 2 or plus years, or have hundreds of followers on whatever platform there are. And I'll put this out to anyone listening. If you want me to fact check, we have software that will tell us how many views podcasts will receive. I'm happy to fact check some podcasts for you. You're like, this seems like an opportunity. Is it? That takes me 30 seconds and I'm happy to do.
Thank you so much.
Of course.
We have a question from Brian.
Hi, Eric. This is Brian Martin. You mentioned the Kaiser Family Foundation is kind of a high value target. Who else would you consider is really sort of who you want to pursue?
Well, it depends where you are. Good to see you, Brian. It depends where you are. If you're in market, Modern Healthcare is a great publication because it speaks directly to your buyer if you're in the hospital space. Otherwise, stat endpoints are huge opportunities as well. So I'd see those as 2 top tiers. And stat is a little more adversarial. They want more of an investigative angle. Endpoints is excellent publication to be in, depending on your market space. And then if you can do a fierce biotech, I think that's strong as well. Some that I think, depending on where you are, that don't have the payoff that some people in our industry believe they should, would be like a TechCrunch or a Fast Company at this stage. I think if you're more consumer, those are good plays, but only once you're in market.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
Well, I think that brings us right up to time. So I want to thank you all for such an engaging discussion, and also a special appreciation to Eric for sharing his valuable insights and experiences. This session has been recorded, and the link along with the slide deck will be shared probably maybe by end of day tomorrow, but probably early next week. We truly appreciate your participation, and we look forward to welcoming you to another event soon. Before you go, just remember that a short survey is going to pop up. I would love for you to take a moment to fill that out. It'd be super helpful. And then, of course, we'll hope to see you at a future event. We'll put the link in there for our website so you can go check out our event calendar. But feel free to connect with us, and we'll see you at the next one. So thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.